Again, I'm Bill Hurd. I'd like to say that in my previous remarks, I did not either intend to make any specific accusations of anyone, or did I make any specific accusations. I always I preceded each comment with "if this had happened." However, I don't know what happened because no one on the council or Mr. Sweeten has been willing to answer inquiries made by people I know about what actually happened. And that's why I think Mr. Mayor should investigate to see the chain of direction that caused these things to happen that did not happen at the council meeting. Mr. Nathan said something, and he mentioned something, and I agree he mentioned that now that I see that. But that did not receive the concurrence of the entire council. Just because you mentioned it doesn't mean it was time to write that into a new resolution. Now let me go back to Gold Butte. I'd like to clean this up too. I think we went too hastily. When an important motion like this occurs, there should be discussion on the motion after the motion is made. Because we see some things that probably should be changed in that resolution, and they may have been changed if the discussion was held after the motion, according to Robert's Rules of Orders, and before the final vote was taken. Therefore, I agree with Mrs. Rattel that Mayor Lippman should veto the motion, veto the resolution as passed, bring it back for further discussion, and resolve these issues that are not totally clear. I am also in favor of getting this resolved, by the way. In terms of Gold Butte, there have been road closures in the past. The proposed legislation would not close anymore. I think that the past road closures should be re-examined to see if the reasons for those closures are still valid, and if possible, more roads should be opened. And I think that would be a good thing to put in the desires of the city council. On wilderness, I'm not a hard either way on wilderness, but I think the city council should allow some additional wilderness if it's fully justified to the city council on a parcel by parcel basis, not on the overall amount.
Time is heard.
Thank you.
Mike McGreer. Councilman Hafen, I appreciate your black and white view of what is right and what is wrong. However, when it comes to drawing boundaries at Whitney Pocket, whether or not that was in the minutes or whether it wasn't, I find that to be absolutely absurd. You have no right to redraw the boundaries. Secondly, I'd like to just let you know what you've done by not going with the wilderness designation. Wilderness designations protect watersheds by law, and that includes our own watershed. Wilderness designations require you to follow the Nevada law. You rejected that. Wilderness designations do not allow the federal government to come in and interfere with those water rights. I think you're irresponsible in not considering some of the legal ramifications, some of the very fine things that are in a wilderness designation. So to conclude, drawing boundary lines, nonsense. To reject the protections for water, irresponsible.
Well, this is John Williams. I had some hope that we were going to be rational and reasonable tonight. I appreciate the clarifications. I was, of course, surprised, as everyone was, that all of a sudden, 3 days before meeting, the area protection was cut in half. And I heard Mr. Rapson say he didn't support that. I heard Mr. Green say he didn't support that. I thought I heard Ms. Delaney say she didn't support that, but it got voted for, and it got approved. Then there's another part of the resolution that says no restriction on any use of motorized vehicles. Now currently, the area of critical environmental concern restricts motorized vehicles to designated highways, designated roads. Your resolution tonight, remove that. You're saying, we don't care what the BLM says, we don't care about staying on the roads. Our resolution says no restriction on the use of motorized vehicles. That is irresponsible, ridiculous, and against any reasonable position to take. I thought I heard Mr. Rapson say he was not for. He meant no additional restrictions, but the bill you guys just passed, either the resolution you just passed, said no restrictions on any motorized vehicles. Means you can take the motorized vehicles and have races up the Petrick list if you want. Nice job.
Good Mortel again. I want to continue my previous comments, and we wanted to point out that it's quite obvious there's a sudden reverse or change in policy. On March 3rd, the comments that were made to the BLM, Mr. Richard Seacrest, which the council unanimously adopted, okay, and said these comments are appropriate for the city of Mesquite, and they refer to land to be used, not to be used for solar power plants, not to be used for wind power plants, not to be used for mining, drilling, or oil, natural gas, and no disposal designations, not to be sold to the highest bidder. It appeared that at that time, the city of Mesquite had a truly conscious effort to protect the areas surrounding, the immediate areas surrounding Mesquite. Gold Butte was mentioned as being designated as a national conservation area, and there were members that were then saying that we should re-explore that. The next day, I guess Mayor Littman put that on the agenda to explore that NCA support issue. We're simply amazed at the change in the policy, and it came so quickly at the behest of, I suppose, one person. We asked the council, and then why this change was so sudden and why it appears to be a reversal of the previous positions. And the way it was worded, we support the NCA, and then on the other hand, we say, well, with these conditions, which really overthrows everything that the NCA stands for. So we asked the council, and we asked them again, to act against this deception and contradiction that we have in Rule Resolution 867. I know this is maybe too late since you passed it, but it's not. You can table the issue again, we can talk about it again. We, the voters, will be resolute in acting against this deception and misdirection, and will hold those responsible for such shenanigans fully accountable in coming elections. Thank you.
Elaine Hurd, Mesquite resident. I was at the technical review meeting the other day. I too recorded it, and even when the minutes were read, there was no discussion on the change of the boundary. It was in reference to putting in some backup materials that would be looked at to radically change the language that cut down the NCA area per your preference was a radical change. I did not mean to imply that Mr. Sweeten was doing anything illegal or unethical. I happen to agree with Councilman Hafen. I only have experience with one previous city attorney, but I think that he probably is an outstanding city attorney, and I like him very much. But the point is, I did not hear a discussion or the instructions in order to change the boundary designation and the preference of council at that meeting. I agree with Councilman Green. And if you are going to do something so radical, then maybe you should do it more openly. And I am concerned that sometimes this council has in the past taken the road of the least transparent way. And I'm asking council to not do that in the future. And I don't see the point of filing an open meeting law complaint. It probably doesn't hold water, as Councilman Hafen said. And I also remind you that we have won that in the past to open up, and council found a way to hide from it or not respect the open meeting law when we had the last ruling on it. Anyway, I'm disappointed in what council did tonight. I think it looks like a 3-to-3 split. I think that's probably fairly representative of the community on Gold Butte. And I do hope that going forward, that the county, the state, and the federal government will be wiser than what I think council did tonight. But I do thank you for all of your hard work on the matter.
Vito Mortel. I live in Mesquite. I wasn't really planning to speak, but as I watched the proceedings, I agree with Mayor Littman that this is very important. And just because it's going to take a little time to really take a look and draft something is not a reason to rush to a vote. There is no rush, okay? I also understand that if you have issues with the congressional bill, the way I would see a responsible way to do it is to go through it line by line. Decide what you really want and then have it presented. Because your resolution can be more. It can be the closest community to this area, and we should have the most say. Okay? If you want a stroke of a pen for a national monument, put something that people are going to discount as just, not important in front of them, and that will happen. And I don't want that either. We need control of our water rights. We need to protect them. And the other thing is to say, it doesn't matter. Okay, in 100 years, you have no idea what's going to happen to that land. What you're crafting today may not matter today, but what is going to happen in the future. And that's what you're really taking a look at, not just today. So I would recommend that Mayor Littman veto this and go with his original discussion of actually taking a look at it. And not just our resolution, but the resolution before Congress that's really going to take the action. Be proactive, be strong, write what we want, and get it. We have a chance to get that. Just to say we don't matter, I don't believe that, because guess what? It's not the government. We are the government. This idea that it's us against them, I don't know where this comes from. Maybe Fox News, okay? But the reality is, we are the government. We have a chance to do what we want if we just take a prudent and considered approach. This seems like you're just bored with it. Well, I think this is one of the most major things that it's a hell of a lot more important than Mesquite Days. I'm sorry. It's important enough to really try to get what we want and not discount our influence. Thank you for listening.
Bob Shively, Mesquite. I was so shocked at the thing, I became a little bit out of order, and I apologize for that. However, I was at that meeting, technical review. I was the first person in the audience, and I was the last person to leave of the audience. I did not hear anything about a line in the sand, drawing on a map, or anything that had to do with 50% reduction of anything. I had no alarm bells at all when I left that meeting. That did not come up. But you're also talking that way, and I'm sitting back this way, so hey, I'm certified. I might have missed something. But I tell you, that was pretty clear cut, because I did talk to a few more people when I got the gist of the thing, especially on that particular aspect of it. And you know what? We didn't hear it. We didn't hear it. I think there's another tape or two floating around, so we'll see. Yeah, but the main thing is, it just jarred me because I didn't hear that at all. And I would not tell you this if I hadn't been there, sat through it. I can tell you that the only person that came into the room first after I did was Joy, and the people that were standing there talking separately, that were all city employees, was Ron Richmond and I think 2 others. But I was the last private person in the room. So I was just shocked. But the main thing is, I really thought that it was still coming to a professional, logical conclusion. Table it. Don't rush it through, because there were many, many discrepancies in that might not even line up with the BLM's ideas or anything else. I think that you can cut yourself off from the table by not being responsive to the actual items themselves and in a way that you can really stand up to. And George, it just seems like that you guys, some of you, just kind of said, hey, let's just roll it on. There are just people out in the audience. And I was offended by that, because that's how it really came across. And I know that's not you normally, but I don't know why you took that deal, but I'm sorry to make it personal, but I guess we've seen a lot of that tonight. But Mayor, I thought you gave the best advice. Table it, because there were 10,000 different angles of information that came tonight, from emotions to facts and to misconceptions. There's no way that you can walk out of here with a clean head with all that debris, and I just really apologize for getting emotional in there, because I really care about Mesquite and Gold Butte and what we do here. Thank you.
My name is Barbara Elistad. Once again, I am not speaking in any official capacity as the Board of Directors for the Virgin Valley Water District. I am from Mesquite. Several years ago, and I'm only saying this because I want this as a matter of record, these numbers. Several years ago, I had a very lengthy discussion on my back patio with Nancy Hall, who was at the time Executive Director of Friends of Gold Butte. And I was doing my research. I went to a very knowledgeable person, and I asked, during the course of the discussion, I asked her, Nancy, how much is enough when it comes to wilderness designation in Gold Butte? And that was my question. How much is enough? And she said, well, I think probably about 45 to 50% of the area is probably a good number. Nancy, at the time, the Senator Reed's bill and Congressman Horsford's bill at the time designated a total of 233,000 acres out of 350,000 acres. Added up, those numbers are still in the two pieces of current legislation introduced by Senator Reed and Congressman Titus, and I believe the number is right about 233,000. And she said, you're not being fair. I said, well, what do you mean? It's 233,000. Even Senator or Congressman Horsford said it was. It was either 220 or 230. And she said, well, you're including land other than what's under the control of the BLM. You're including land that is under the control of the National Park Service down by Lake Mead. So you're not being fair. I said, no, Nancy, you're not being fair to the public, because a government agency is a government agency. It is between 220 and 230,000 acres out of 350,000 acres that this legislation once designated as wilderness. I believe you mentioned earlier, right now, it's 28,000. I just want those numbers on the record. Thank you.